What is the worst thing that has happened at a high school reunion party that you attended? At my 10-year high school reunion, we had a decent turnout, maybe 100 plus people. We were at a pretty nice hotel banquet hall. There was one guy I had known all through high school, and he was a well-known stoner. I'll call him Chris for this story. I see Chris walk into the banquet hall, stop in his tracks, turn around in a very slow 360-degree circle, surveying the entire room. He just says, "Whoa," and he looks visibly alarmed. He stops and his eyes settle on me. I say, "Hey, Chris. Long time no see, man." He kind of slides over to me and whispers in my ear, "This is really weird. I'm pretty sure I know every single person in this room." And that is when I realize he is wearing the same clothes as all the banquet hall workers. Oh my god. Chris is working as a server at his own high school reunion, and he has no clue what is happening. I walk him out to the front lobby and explain it's our 10-year high school reunion. He is mortified, beyond embarrassed. He was never contacted and didn't even realize it had been 10 years since we graduated. He just knew he was working another catering gig in a never-ending series of catering gigs. I make him take me to his manager. I explain what is happening and tell the manager there is no way this guy is working his own high school reunion. Awesomely, the manager agrees. We find a different suit jacket and tie for him, and I take Chris back to the party. He ended up having a good night. 5-year reunion. One guy, always kind of a marginal figure in HS, but a nice person, after some sort of discussion, got his paycheck out and got loud saying, "Now do you think I'm a loser? Don't believe how much I make. Check this out." Of course, he just made things worse and everyone was laughing at him. I mean, he had his paycheck on him, haven't seen him since, BTW. At my 10-year reunion, the organizers were doing the thing where they give awards for the person who came the farthest to attend, the person with the most kids, etc. The award came up for who had the oldest kid, and people started shouting out their kids' ages. When it quieted down, this shy girl near the front said in a normal voice, 11, and then we all realized why we had stopped seeing Heather right before graduation. Someone who was considered a popular kid at my high school tried to organize our 10-year high school reunion on a cruise ship. Obviously no one wanted to shell out that kind of money, so the reunion never happened. During our reunion, a social group of cool people that I had cordial relations with during high school, but was never part of, all met up and were pretty happy about it. Until it somehow came out over alcohol that all of them had been basically having orgies together during high school. Except one of them. He had always seemed like a core member of the group from the outside, not unattractive or anything, but for some reason he was just never clued into the fact that all his friends were fucking each other en masse for basically as long as they knew each other. There was some very eye-opening loud screaming. When I was in 7th grade, this rich snob bully, John, grabbed off my head a wool scarf my mother had knitted for me. He threw the scarf into a pile of muddy leaves and jumped up and down on it. When I went home that day, my mother was furious when she saw the torn, muddy scarf. She made me tell her who did it, then she called the school principal and yelled at him. The next day John got pulled into the principal's office and paddled. That was back when they still paddled kids. 55 years later, at our 50th class reunion, John came up to me and angrily said, "You got me into trouble in 7th grade." I got him in trouble? And he's still mad about it, 55 years later. I said, "John, you were a dick in high school, and you're still a dick," and I walked away. Not mine, but my mother went back to her 40-year reunion last summer. In December she left my father, 36 years of marriage, for her high school sweetheart, and is now living with him. Small college reunion with my core group of friends from university. This was about 5 years after graduation. We all partied pretty hard in school, but mellowed out in our late 20s. Decided to all meet up for dinner at a local bar/restaurant. Think Applebee's, but nicer. One guy showed up already wasted, with a duffel bag full of multiple packets of weed, and the bottle he started on before meeting us. He decided we were boring, finished his bottle in the restroom, and refused to come out. He ended up passing out there. Bartender kicked him out. He came alone in an Uber, and we had no idea where he lived. None of us wanted to take him to our places. He was angry, puking and belligerent, so we dropped him off at his last known address, his parents' house. Both of them answered the door, and we handed him over. It was past midnight and incredibly awkward. He's not invited to the next reunion. It's been a decade since I finished school. I see an old classmate sometimes when he does maintenance work in my apartment block. About a year ago he asked if I was going to the reunion organized by some of our classmates. I said no, because I couldn't think of anything worse and also hadn't been invited. Apparently they organized it over Facebook, which I don't have. When I next saw him 6 months later I asked how the reunion was, and he exasperatedly explained that it had been a real shit show. The mean girls had started planning it together, fell out and then started each planning their own. So there was about 4 shitty tiny awkward parties and everyone was confused. The people who were supposed to plan our high school reunion dropped the ball, so I figured it wouldn't happen. But then this other dude from our high school stepped up to plan it. He was in a graduate program and also working part-time at a banquet hall, and he said that his boss would give us the banquet hall space for free. It was a really nice gesture, and he seemed really into it. He had been miserable in high school, grumpy, sullen, unpleasant, mean to other people. He came out in college, so maybe the weight of having to keep it a secret was part of why he was so unpleasant. Maybe he'd be more fun now. I was working a shit job and had no savings at the time, so I was neither interested in having my former classmates pity me, nor was I gunning to shell out a lot of money to attend. Plus my shitty ex might be there, and that didn't feel worth it. The organizer made a Facebook event and asked people to Venmo him the cost of admission prior to attending. He wanted something like $15-20 a head, I can't remember. Anyway, it didn't really feel worth paying for. Maybe if there would be some drinks included or something, I would go for an hour. I sent him a private message asking what the admissions ticket covered, food, drinks. The space was free, after all. He posted publicly on the Facebook page that if the cost of admission was too steep, message me and we can work out some financial aid. What? I then publicly posted asking what the admission cost covered. No response. Other people asked too. He said it would go towards having a bartender and server dedicated to the event space, as well as towards food. Okay, fair. Folks, he was the server. My friend showed up having not yet paid him, and he barred her entry. The people who had paid the admission cost showed up to an empty banquet hall, were given a menu by their former classmate, and told to order their own food and drink from him. He pocketed the admission ticket money as his fee. After an hour, he brought out one grocery store sheet cake for 75 people to share. That was it. It wasn't really bad, just odd. A guy came with full Kiss style makeup on, white face, black shapes around his eyes and black lips. We were too awkward and polite to mention it, so everyone just chatted with him, as though it was completely normal to turn up like that. One guy had made not one, but 2 fortunes, and had a net worth of well over $100 million by our 20th reunion. High-speed modem patents in the late 1980s, early investor in broadband. Right place at the right time. He'd already retired. On our classmate update bulletin he listed his occupation as unemployed and unemployable as a bit of a gag. Some of the well-meaning but clueless types sought him out to offer encouragement and tips on how to find work. Didn't happen to me, but I had this friend who got someone pregnant back in the day, and she kept the kid. They've both been great about it. He helps financially, but that was the extent of his contribution. She married soon out of high school, and met a great guy who has been the de facto dad. Either way, it's a day bring your kids, if you have them event and someone let slip that my friend is that kid's real dad. And the kid heard it, and it was a fucking shit show. Everyone was trying to figure out who said that, and how could someone spill that secret, etc. In the end my friend pretended he was shocked, and laughed it off as a joke, which honestly in front of the kid was probably a good move. At my 20-year reunion, 2 decades after high school, 2 guys got arrested for fist fighting on the sidewalk outside the bar we went to Friday night. Why were they fighting? One of the guys slept with the other guy's girlfriend in high school and drunkenly brought up the 20 years ago fling. Neither of them married her or even dated her after high school. Those idiots got charges 20 years later for her, though. I didn't go to my 10-year, but my entire friend group did, and they all called me asking where I was. While on the phone with one of them, he goes, "Oh shit, Brittany is here." Brittany was a train wreck in high school and apparently hadn't changed in 10 years. She proceeded to get trashed, get in a fight with a waitress, and did meth in the bathroom. Police picked her up that night after she was found her passed out in the McDonald's bathroom. We'd been there less than an hour, having a great time reconnecting. Suddenly an old friend approached and said, "Is that your wife over there? She's pretty hammered," and as we watched, she tripped and fell face first full body crash onto a 12-top table where many of my old classmates were sitting. The table broke, food and drinks flew everywhere. I walked over, scooped her up, and half carried / half walked her out the door. She took Xanax before going, unbeknownst to me, and was an alcoholic who started slamming drinks as soon as she got there. So, good times. My class never got to the reunion part. Our class president was Maya. When they tried to plan our 5-year reunion on Facebook, it evolved into people fighting over the venue and whether or not kids were allowed. Half the people wanted to get trashed and get away from their kids, if they had any. The other half wanted a dry reunion in a local park with kids allowed. Our class also had no money because they spent it on stupid crap senior year, so people argued over whether it would be catered or a potluck, and how much they would collect from everyone if it was the former. Edit. This was a fund for senior trip, prom, etc. I don't remember where the money came from, just know it ran out. I would not have gone, even if they'd managed to figure something out. Someone I knew from school tried to arrange an unofficial reunion as the school weren't going to do one. He was socially inept, so would say, and do odd things which people picked up on a lot. But his heart was always in the right place. He went to a lot of effort, but very few people responded at all. Those that did mostly made snide comments about the event behind their back, like dissing the location, etc. Some made fun of him personally too, as he was doing some admittedly odd organizing. Then close to the event he cancels and blows up, sending everyone a justified message about how they can all go suck eggs, and he was just trying to do something nice and wanted to catch up with people. That was received with more snide remarks too. He died unexpectedly just a few months later. Edit. This exploded, so I'll try to read all replies and answer. He died from a heart attack. He was a very large person, which seems to have contributed. I'm not sure if many people from the reunion know or not. I found out on FB as he was a friend on there. This was a 15-year reunion, so 30 over 31-year-olds, UK. I'm from the UK, so maybe our reunions here are different to US. Most of the people who didn't reply seem to be the more decent people, and coincidentally the ones who have moved away or just moved on in their lives. Those who did were mostly the ones who still spent every week at the same bars with their same school friends. When it cancelled, they all actually went out the same night for drinks, but didn't invite the organizer. A not example of organizing was explaining the color theme of the space to everyone so they could make sure they color coordinated their outfits. Someone had an epileptic seizure and we had to call an ambulance. They were okay, but the party ended very early. My sister, my now husband, and I were all in the same graduating class. Plus, my husband's best friend. Best friend's name is something like John Smith. Very common. He was very popular in HS. Super nice guy, stood out in a crowd. If you didn't know him, you certainly knew of him. Even in a massive school. So anyway, the 20 years reunion rolls around. My sister is the only one who wanted to go. She called right after, very upset. Apparently there was a huge memorial wall for John Smith, who had just died. None of us knew. Awful. My husband was like, huh? But we just saw him, called him up and was like, Hey Jude, are you dead? No, not dead. Surprised, but not dead. Anyway, it turned out the much less popular other John Smith was the one who died. They made a lovely memorial for the wrong guy, who was forgotten totally. We still run into people to this day who see him and are like, hey, aren't you supposed to be dead? Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.